Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to this video. So in this video, we are going to discuss the fourth standard in ethical principle of psychologists and code of conduct, which is privacy and confidentiality. So in this standard, we are going to discuss 7 substandards with regard to this privacy and confidentiality. So before we go further, a little bit of revision what we have covered so far. So in this class, we already covered the Islamic foundations of ethics. And then we also discussed the preamble as well as the general principle of ethics for code of conduct in psychology based on APA code of conduct. Okay, we have covered principle A, beneficence and non-maleficence. We have covered the principle B, fidelity and responsibility. We have covered principle C, integrity. We have covered principle D on justice, and we covered on principle E, respect for people's rights and dignity. Okay, and then we have discussed in details about the standard as well as the ethical issues with regard to standard on resolving ethical issues, standard on competence, and previously standard on human relation. As of now, we have covered the most on human relation, which have 12 substandards regarding human relation. So in this lecture, we are going to discuss in detail on standard 4, privacy and confidentiality. By now, you should have already realized that many of the aspects in code of conduct relates to this standard 4, okay, privacy and confidentiality. So in this standard, we are going to discuss 4 substandards, okay, substandard 1, maintaining confidentiality, substandards 4.02, discussing the limits of confidentiality, Standard 4.03 on recording, Standard on 4.05 minimizing intrusion on privacy, Standard 4.05 on disclosure, Standard of 4.06 on consultations, and lastly Standards on 4.07 use of confidential information for didactic or other purposes. Okay, Standard 4.01 maintaining confidentiality. I believe that by now you're already familiar about privacy and confidentiality, okay, when you come across informed consent and etc. So this standard basically bind us as a psychologist, you in the future, on how to conduct yourself when you dealing with private and confidential information. So standard 4.01 stated this: psychologists have a primary obligation and take reasonable precaution. Okay, this is the standard word, precautions, to protect confidential information obtained through or stored in any medium, recognizing that the extent and limits of confidentiality may be regulated by law or established by institutional rules or professional or scientific relationships. So this standard 4.01 should be read together with standard 2.05, delegation of work to others. Okay, so if you recall, when we talk about standard 2.05, delegation of work to others, we also discuss on how information about our client, sometimes sensitive information, sometimes private information and confidential information, will be shared amongst the teams, which may involve you as service provider, therapists, or maybe other administrative officers with regards to the project. Okay, in this case, this standard basically inform us that we have to take primary obligations to take reasonable precaution. Okay, you cannot simply make the information, the sensitive informations, the private information of your clients, of the institution of your client, of people who involve directly or indirectly in the process of your service on regard to the information that they provided. Why? Because this information is bound to the standard that we have to protect, whereby we have to be cautious. Okay, we cannot simply put or store this information in a medium where everyone can access. Okay, because we will not know what others will use this kind of information. And for some countries, they already highlighted, okay, the law with regard to this information. Okay, if you recall that previously within the previous government, one of the whistleblower basically expose one of the project which were supposed to be awarded to private entity, but somehow involve some kind of unethical dealing, whereby one of the members of the minister received the project. So basically, after these politicians disclose about the information of this project, the company involved, which supposedly at the first place in this unethical dealing, bring to the court. Okay, reported this politician. Okay, I cannot mention the name. Okay, reported these politicians to the police and to the SPRM, the authority body, with regards to its confidential information. And I believe, okay, if you can check the records, basically this politician has been found to commit unlawful action where he received confidential information about this company unethically, okay, unlawfully. So basically, he was sent to jail. Okay, so I'm not going to discuss about the merit of this case. What I'm going to show you here that in some countries, there are laws which prohibit us, one, to disclose the information, and two, even how we obtain those information. Okay, if you familiar yourself with the breaching of trust, okay, so in this case, similar case will happen. So basically, if we abide by these standards, we should be able to protect ourselves or not to disclose or not to share confidential and private information with others. Okay, even if we are not regulated by law, we must also follow or abide by the company rules, okay, rules and regulation. Okay, whether it's our own company, okay, as the consultant who provide the service, or as the organization itself, our client organization. And even if we are not bound by this sort of rule by the organization, we also must know that as a psychologist who are practicing, we are bound by our profession, okay, professional or scientific relationship. Okay, if you involve in some kind of research, for example, okay, even if you are not psychologist, research ethics also maintain that we must protect private and confidential information, and we should not share it with others.